Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we are back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is April 17th, Wednesday. Apparently it is Noble Garden, aka the few days before Easter in Hearthstone land. So we got some golden cards we'll look at and 2 card packs. And yeah, I don't know if there's anything else besides the Tavern Brawl. Let's re-roll. Which one should we re-roll? 2 Warlock or 1 Paladin or Warrior? I think I can win Paladin or Warrior pretty easily, so Shaman class cards. That might be a little bit harder. So I guess what we could do to start off with is talk about Castlevania Lord of Shadows 2. That game is not happening. Well, so we got these Machino eggs, which are in gold form, so I might as well just dust them. So immediately I'm dusting the gold eggs because there's better things I could do with them, and I already have clearly 2 copies regular, and that's why I got gold versions of them. So yeah, at a certain point you run into the toy maker, and I cannot tell if I'm halfway through Lord of Shadows 2 or 3/4 of the way through or what. I really don't have a clue. And at one point they give you this mini game to put on a play using marionette puppets, basically, and you're listening to a person talk and he'll say some keywords and you have to select the keywords that were said to continue the part of the play. And then you have a pretty decent boss fight against the toy maker and giant puppets. So like there really was no reason for the play at all. I should have just walked in the room and fought the toy maker, and that would have been that. Nothing else needed. Let's see, what does this say? Dr. Boom is tired of eggs and bunnies. Choose a class and play with treats he's placed in your deck. And then we'll just get a classic card pack, which we have 100% of all the cards in the classic card pack, so unless I'm just going for gold, that doesn't make any sense. We'll play Shaman so we can play Shaman cards. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that are not Castlevania. It really feels like Lord of Shadows 2 is either heavily borrowing or taking stuff that was from a Metal Gear game, because there's a lot of stealth sequences. There was one stealth sequence that was so bad that I really didn't even understand what I was supposed to be doing with it, and so eventually I just ran through it after the 3rd attempt. I'm like, forget this, I'll just run and see what happens. And that got me through it, so I guess that was the right move. They integrated the Mirror of Fate DS game events sort of into the story, so you kind of wouldn't know what the story is if you just played Lord of Shadows 1 and then skipped to Lord of Shadows 2. And it's been so long since I played Lord of Shadows 1 anyways, that there is still an element of that is occurring where the story doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, if very possibly you have to play all of the Castlevania games. I looked to see if any of the Castlevania games are actually on Steam. None of the old ones are. So you are, if you were going to play those on PC, probably left with having to run them through emulators and finding ROMs somewhere. that would be my assumption as to the way you would play them. But Lord of Shadows in itself was supposed to be a reboot, so the fact that it doesn't immediately make itself apparent what the story is when I'm just a second game in is confusing, to say the least. There's just like a lot of gameplay, a lot of stretching. Lots of places in Castlevania 2 have been blatantly made obvious that I need a double jump, so I can't even really think about playing the game and getting all the collectibles until I have that double jump, which seems to be further than where I've been. Feels like 20 hours of gameplay has happened. I doubt that that's actually the case, but it definitely feels like that. Summon 311 boombots. I'll just end my turn here, I guess. Yeah. I would have much preferred them just make a new 2.5D Castlevania game. And I guess that's what that game that is about to come out, or recently came out, is all about. What was that name? Ritual of Blood, Ritual of the Moon. I can't remember the name of it. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random basic totem. Okay. Draw 2 cards. Okay. There we go. Well, that's a nightmare. I also own Axiom Verge, and I don't see a reason not to play Axiom Verge after this. If I own Dead Cells, and Dead Cells I think is now out of early access, I would also consider playing that. As far as other Metroidvania games of note on Steam, I'm not sure there are any. Let's see. We can do this.
Job's done.
And then return. Although I should just be focusing on playing the Shaman cards.
Scratch. Branches grow.
I feel like at some point there should have been also a
balance in all things.
There should have been, in the middle of development, an experiment that was done for Lord of Shadows where it was just a boss rush game. A cool cutscene has Dracula walk towards a boss, fight the boss, defeat the boss, see a cool cutscene, it fades out, it cuts back into the it fades out and then cuts back into another boss. That's probably not how you would actually design games, frankly. But if in early development, very possibly would have been a smarter move than what they are doing, because the Assassin's Creed climbing, that being programmed or being something that was even allowed as an idea instead of free range climbing and platforming, That it's basically the exact opposite. The way they've done it, they've made it so there are very specific linear paths where you can climb instead of a free range climbing, which would fit into platforming, or you simply just have jumping and platforming with maybe some ledge grabbing in the similar way that Super Mario 64 accomplished jumping and ledge climb grabbing. And with Super Mario 64, there was very few places you could actually climb up a wall, but there were even a few bits of that. So it's kind of ridiculous that you have this much older game in Lord of Shadows 2, and it can't even get 3D platforming and climbing right. There are really no platforms you jump from, except for like maybe once in a while you'll have a gap in the road that you have to jump to, and that's about it. There's way too many collectibles in the game, which I always get the feeling when I see that is some contractually obliged thing. You'll get into rooms where there's easily 5 or 6 collectibles in a moderately large room with some verticality, but in no way should there have been more than 2 collectibles in the room, not 6. The overworld stuff is a joke, because whenever you get outside, there's nothing that happens outside, because there's just not enough RAM in the consoles that the game was designed to be played in. If your deck has no even cost cards, I think our deck probably does have even cost cards, but let's start with that. So yeah, I'm really not enjoying Castlevania 2. I'd like to just finish it up, but I have no idea if I'm halfway through. I will say with the Mirror of Fate thing, they have you go get a piece of the Mirror of Fate. They don't really make it clear that you're getting only a piece of it in one boss fight, and then you pretty quickly go to a second boss fight and get the second piece of the Mirror of Fate. And then I think that there's a third piece that I'm trying to get right now, and that's it. They show in the animation where it felt like it would be closer to 12 pieces, but they fortunately chose not to take it that direction and make you find 12 different pieces of the Mirror of Fate throughout the entire land, which it definitely feels like that's something they had originally intended to do. I just found the map rooms. There had been rooms that looked like the elevators, and I had been skipping those because they just looked like elevator rooms that would have taken me to the kind of useless central hub area, which I need to go back to the central hub area, but I also need to get the double jump ability, so before I go back to the central hub area. So almost certainly next time I get an opportunity to be in that section, I probably should go to that section just to go to the Chupacabra shop and buy more dungeon keys, which after the first couple that I collected in the game, I've not collected any more dungeon keys at all. Nor have I run into any doors that actually require dungeon keys to be open.
Job's done.
So it seems like they're being used exclusively for collectible reasons. Little vaults of XP. It seems to be all you get from it. So I guess in theory, if I didn't collect those, I would just have less XP. The whole combo system and XP system is terrible. At least in the DS Mirror of Fate game, you just got XP, even though they often would gate you and stop you from collecting XP if you weren't far enough along in the story. But you would get XP when you hit a certain level. You would unlock a new ability. In in Lord of Shadows 2, you get XP points, which can unlock an ability, which lets you use the ability, but then the fighting mechanic of the game really never works that you would want to use that ability. So instead, what you're ending up doing is unlocking an ability and then not really having any reason to use that ability. But you have to use the abilities, basically all the abilities, a certain amount to level up your mastery, which I assume, they really never explained it, leveling up your mastery makes you deal more damage. Either that, or it does nothing and it's just for an achievement, which that might also be the case. So you have to unlock, for instance, the ability to somersault over an enemy and then hit XXX. Once you unlock that ability, then you have to somersault over enemies and hit XXX a lot. And it's really not worth it. Most of Castlevania should just be tapping X and Y, because that is the exact thing you would be doing in the older Castlevania games. You would have had a B button to attack on the NES and an A button to jump, or vice versa, and that would have really been it. You would have maybe hit the select button to throw an axe or do a magic spell or something, and even in that instance, there's something to be said, because so far for Lord of Shadows there's been no item throwing, no axe throwing, nothing like that. Nothing that's consumable and that would be refilled. You can throw blood daggers that automatically refill, and you can use magic to turn your blood daggers into explosive bombs, or freezing blood daggers that will freeze the enemy, which that requires magic and eventually exhaust. But nothing that's really powerful. You also get into a lot less fights than you would think. Let's see. Well, if I did this, I'm very possible I might win. So yeah, that's a lot to say about a game I'm not having fun with. I really just want to get it done and move on. It's probably gonna be on the channel for a very long time. It's probably gonna be like Deus Ex Human Revolution in that sense, or The Witcher 3, although in no way as good as those games. And yeah, that's just, it's frustrating when you run into a mediocre mediocre game. And you're just not having fun with it. It's just like it's just always a bummer, and sometimes that's something that has to happen, certainly. Yeah, I don't want my channel to be only about playing the best of the best games, but I also would like to avoid playing games that on the face of them look bad. And I would say that Lord of Shadows 2, Castlevania Lord of Shadows 2, it doesn't look bad on the face of it. If you don't see the gameplay, or if you only see a little bit of the gameplay, it looks like a really cool game. It just plays really badly. And it's playing really badly for me, in particular, as somebody who hasn't played any of the Castlevania games and kind of has only barely played the Metroid games. I played like the Metroid Prime games, so this should be right up my alley in a lot of ways. We got that victory, so we're done with the Tavern Brawl. That was taking a little long. We really only, on this account, need to get one daily quest done. Also, we could leave it for Friday. That being said, I've talked through all of this, and so I might as well get more things done on Wednesday. I don't think notifications went out today, so we'll see if that affects anything. I was watching a YouTuber who streams Sky Factory, Minecraft Sky Factory 4, which just came out like a day or two ago, and he was getting like, he got like 100 people on the stream immediately, and I'm like, jeez, how badly am I not promoted by YouTube that just kind of a random person that has a small YouTuber channel can get 100 streams, and yet I couldn't add up all the views I have on my streams in the past month and probably say I had 100 views doing a live stream. That might be an exaggeration, but probably not by much. Alright, well, we're at rank 13, so let's start with Paladin, because I think we're on a winning streak, and then I think we might go to casual and try out the Shaman deck before we come back to rank play. I also wish there was a way to switch around, like switch off of playing Castlevania 2 and play some other game that almost would require 2 setups, and then that would cause inconsistency problems immediately. So what often happens is we'll have I'll record 30-minute video for Lord of Shadows 2. Then I have to wait at least a few seconds, a minute, maybe 2, for it to convert from an MKV into a
the light protects me.
What are they called? MP4 video, which that pause stops me from wanting to just sit in the chair and continue to work on that one thing. So then I often will get up and do something different, and so it just expands and then expands and expands the gaps in time. I'm also having split sleep schedules again, where I'll fall asleep around 8 or 9 or 10 in the evening, sleep for 2 to 3 hours, then wake up, spend the entire evening till about 6 in the morning, at that point pretending or trying to go back to sleep and not succeeding at it. So I'm usually watching Netflix, or I'm trying to use my Amazon Prime account a little bit. There's very little on Amazon Prime that I would actually pay for, but I do like the free shipping, and so I'll stick with it because of that. And same is true with the Prime Twitch for game stuff. It's just I don't care about the Twitch launcher, so I don't care if they're giving me free games or not. So that's been a failure, frankly. The MKV to MP4 I think what I'm gonna have to do is change it, quite frankly, and just have it make MKVs in the first place, and then from that point, let's see, what does this do? Draws a mech card from your deck.
Got something to hide? I fight.
Like, there's a way to convert MKVs manually, and so I think at the end of the day, I'm just gonna convert all those videos manually and then upload them. But by getting that little, it really is just a 2-minute pause, but giving you an opportunity to lose momentum is the thing that's killing me. And frankly, on my YouTube channel, I've just been losing momentum a lot for a long time now. It's been like 5 years of running this channel, and it's just like, yeah, I came out blazes burning, and now it's just like, two things. I heard somebody say pretty definitively that you get not promoted if you put more than 2 videos out per day, so my YouTube channel can never ever be promoted because I would have to really change how I did things. I'd have to put out frankly extremely long videos, 3 hours of one game a day, 3 hours of another game the next day, things like that would be about the only way I could even manage to even maintain the much lower production rate that I'm doing now. And I am moderately far ahead. I haven't done scheduling in quite a long time, but I'm moderately far ahead, so I think we'll roll into the Halloween October month and maybe do a little bit more around those type of games, and then try to have better and more content for November and December at the end of this year, and then maybe if we have more content and better content for November and December, we could push into January and February and have better content. It might be that instead of 2 games plus Hearthstone, we just bump it up to 3 games plus Hearthstone, or even go back up to 4.
The light protects me.
Let's just attack here and see what happens. Yep, explosive trap. Anyways, let's start covering the news. So, the big story that's not really a surprise, we have finally gotten the truth out. Gamma Sutra and other people have an article of similar titles. Sony has internal policies in place to reduce sexual content in PS4 games. We've heard that this was the case for months and months and months, at least 6 months. We've seen it clearly be the case where we see games getting censored for the PS4 version, but not as censored or not censored at all for the Nintendo Switch version. Clearly, this is an example of why you don't let Sony of Japan, Sony Entertainment Interactive's home offices that were in Japan, I believe, move to the heart of SJW country, puritanical, like, sexist. It is sexism. It's just sexism in the guise of women. Fictional characters can't decide for themselves whether they want to be scantily clad or nude otherwise. There was a statement that I that I heard, and I think this kind of is reflected a lot in the Japanese mentality too, is that you should be able to respect a woman if she's wearing no clothes the same as much as she's wearing clothes, and anything in between. Same is true for men. You should be able to respect anybody regardless of what they're wearing or not wearing. I would say that in general that's true. Frankly though, if you're a CEO and you dress like Randy Pitchford, I'm gonna lose a little respect for you because you're not playing the game that you know you should be playing. Almost every IT job I've had has asked me, or forced me quite honestly, to dress in a professional manner that I personally would not have just chosen. But I understand it. You want to give off an air of authority, and there are a lot of quick to judge people, frankly, in the world. So this article, I think we'll probably just read all this. Sony has its own rules in place for what content makes it to the PS4, rules that are sometimes stricter than those of regional rating systems like the ESRB. The company said as much in the conversation with the Wall Street Journal via Engadget. Well, did they talk to the Wall Street Journal or Engadget? Explaining that it has its own guidelines in place to deal with sexual material in games, though the company didn't detail how long the policy has been in place. I can guarantee you the policy was put in place close to day one of the offices being open in LA or California, wherever these new Sony home office, Sony Interactive Entertainment offices are. This was just like a huge mistake, and it probably is an indicator that Sony of Japan, the big Sony, has lost interest in doing PlayStation, and so it's extrapolating a lot of data here, but I would take it to mean that the PlayStation 5, which there will be news about the PlayStation 5 too later today, I wouldn't invest in it. I wouldn't buy it, frankly. Not just because all the lewd and adult games are going to get censored or not allowed on the PlayStation. That is a big factor, because that means less Japanese game developers are almost certainly going to not support they're almost certainly not going to support PlayStation as much as moving over to the Switch. Also, you could take that same thought from the fact that the Vita was not replaced with a portable device. And Sony hasn't offered anything in the way of a replacement for the Vita, whereas at the very least, if Sony was interested in making video game consoles, they would have had their Sony cell phones, which they make, have a special games launcher and really push that, or they would have really tried to have a storefront that was PlayStation exclusives on Android phones, but there's literally nothing like that. So that's just another indicator in my mind that they don't really care about I guess I don't have any friendly Murlocs. Oops. I thought these sparks were Murlocs, but they're not. They're elementals. So, yeah, I definitely would suggest not buying the PlayStation 5. I think the exclusives are going to be bad. I think even games, when you have games like Devil May Cry, come out and be censored. That they're not giving any kind of special treatment to big games. You're gonna see, if I was a Japanese person, and I would see a lot of this as just a lack of respect to the artists and creators, and if they feel like they've been disrespected this way by taking away their freedom to express themselves, they're not gonna stick with you, frankly. Sony had a lot of goodwill, and certainly, well, it wasn't even goodwill. A lot of game developers in Japan did not want to piss off Sony. That's why a lot of Japanese games did not come over to the Xbox. That being said, they will jump ship to Nintendo, and the Nintendo is more than open arms to take all those games. There's literally very few games I think Nintendo would reject on the Switch at this point. And if you want to make a good-looking what does this do? Deal 4 damage? If you want to make a good-looking game that the Switch can't handle, you're going to start seeing a lot more Japanese developers go straight to PC. On top of that, the Xbox discless, cheaper Xbox One S device has been officially announced, so that might actually even get a few more sales in Japan. So yeah, it's majorly concerning that Sony of Japan is pulling out of the PlayStation brands. They just don't seem like they want to deal with it anymore. Clearly that's the case if they handed it to an American company. They would have never released that power unless they didn't care about it. When you look at what Nintendo of Japan controls versus what Nintendo of America controls, Nintendo of America and Nintendo of Europe and anything outside of Japan, frankly, does not do anything, frankly. They're just localization companies. And Nintendo of Japan does not make any new products. Well, Nintendo of America doesn't make any new products. Nintendo of Europe doesn't make any new games. All the Zelda, all the Mario games, straight out of Nintendo of Japan, just localized and released and published via Nintendo of Europe and Nintendo of America. There's probably some other Nintendos out there that I'm not even aware of. Getting back to the story, the story doesn't mention the specific rules or what Sony considers appropriate threshold for sexual content, but the spokesman said that the goal is to help devs, quote, offer well-balanced content, end quote, without interfering with, quote, the sound growth and development, end quote, of younger players.
I'm out of cards.
This is a false statement, frankly. Because all of the games that have been censored have been mature rated. So the protecting the children argument is thrown out the window again. That it's always tried to be used, but it's always stupid. It always is just incredibly dumb argument when you have the ESRB already in existence and that and games already being rated. I think we're just playing casual here, so we're cool to lose here. As Engadget points out, this internal policy may be why most The most recent Devil May Cry used a noticeable lens flare to cover up some minor nudity in the PlayStation version of the game, a change that wasn't reflected in the Japanese PS4 release, or the worldwide PC release, or the Xbox One versions, or I guess it wasn't released on the Switch for Devil May Cry. As mentioned by Eurogamer, some other games have been reportedly delayed on the PS4 in past due to requests from the developers to remove some content deemed inappropriate ahead of its release. Entire sections of content have been removed at this point too. It's not just that it's not just that it's a case of, oh, there's a lens flare in one cutscene or a few cutscenes. Entire sections of gameplay have been removed from some of the more adult games, but it doesn't matter. You're throwing out "we're protecting the children" argument, and that's just an invalid argument, frankly. And Sony has always been a little restrictive there. I can name on 0 fingers the number of officially released PlayStation 4 adults-only titles. It's been 0, almost certainly. Like, same is true for the Xbox One. I don't believe there's been a single adults-only game. I don't think that there even has been an adults-only game released in the past 12 months. Because people know that they can't get on consoles, and they might as well not get ESRB rated at all if their game is going to be adults only. I think the closest thing to an adults only game would have been
The light protects me.
Agony. Yeah, I guess Agony would have been the closest one to an adults only rated. Agony unrated, probably. Yeah, and unrated is in the title, so it probably didn't get an ESRB rating. So, if the argument here was that too many games via ESRB are rated mature, I think that argument could certainly be made. I don't know what you do about that other than to say maybe we should add some more tiers there. Maybe M-V for violence, M-VN for violence and nudity, and do like the indicators used to do, where they gave a little bit more information. That information is on the back of the box of games already, but it might be better if it was more front of the box facing to have some different labels there. Frankly, there probably should be something between a T and T16, T17, T18. But I think in the end, everybody would just go for M. In the same way that for a very long time, almost all movies that were being made were going for a
Got something to hide?
hard R that could be edited down to a PG-13 for replaying the movies on TV later. Moving on, it is also worth mentioning Gamasutra is the most dev-friendly website, so we have to always remember our sources. So that article probably didn't have as much detail as I would have liked, talking about Sony's new policy. We knew this was here. The good news, though, is Steam seems to have moderately backed down from that idea. Too much pressure, and frankly, I think even internally, Steam's own libertarian points of view was clashing with that idea. That being said, a lot of Steam's points of view clash with a lot of the things they do. I would guess. Kill this.
The battle! The battle!
So Gamma Sutra, same website, has an article. Sony teases next-gen PlayStation specs in new interview. This is the same interview, I believe. So they probably wanted in this interview to only talk about the PS5 and got forced to defend themselves in part by their new policies, their new restrictive content creation policies. And you really have to look at that. It's like, it doesn't really matter how good the PlayStation 5 is hardware wise if nobody wants to support it. This puts the ball back into Microsoft's court. All Microsoft has to do is announce their Xbox 2 and not have it be always online and full of DRM and or in some other way an annoying mess. Let's see. There is a misnomer here that is in this article, from my understanding. They're saying it will support 8K graphics. This is not true. What I think was said is it will support connecting to 8K TVs, and they are kind of allowing people to be confused and tricked into believing that means it will support 8K graphics. In the ways that it might support 8K graphics, maybe if you put a still 8K image on the screen, on the like a photo viewer app on it, you could look at an 8K image. It probably would support that. But when you're talking moving video that is being rendered in real time via the video card, 8K is not going to happen. Even if that was possible, you also have to bend that to reality. Nobody in reality owns an 8K monitor. Nobody's going to own an 8K monitor or TV by the end of life of the PlayStation 5. It's going to say it supports 3D audio. Well, no, duh. The games systems have supported 3D audio in its many varied ways that you define 3D audio for years now. It's gonna have what they say is a lightning quick SSD. To me, I suspect what this will be is a SSD that has that is kind of like a hybrid drive, where there will be some really fast SSD to hold maybe 16 gigabytes or maybe as much as 64 gigabytes. If a Blu-ray double layer disc is like 50 gigabytes, which I think it is, I could see like 64 gigabytes holding the operating system and the current game you're on, and then a slower SSD that would be marginally faster than a hard drive, but in no way as fast. For the rest of the space. And space is going to be a major factor, particularly if there was an actual believability that they would have 8K support, because games with 8K's textures would be huge with a lot of downloading. And it says it will be backward compatible with PS4 games, which it basically has to be that, otherwise people are going to be really upset. but it won't be backwards compatible with PlayStation 3 games, and they had only recently started to get some kind of emulation going so that you could play PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of back catalog that if I thought PlayStation really cared about doing about continuing to be a game console developer, you would expect it to be more backward compatible than just PlayStation 4 games. I would like to see those that happen. Really, we kind of need to see a new entrant, a new third person enter the field as far as hardware, and that might be Google Stadia, that might be Apple with an Apple Arcade box of some sort. It might be Sega coming back out of nowhere. Does it really have to be a Japanese company? Not really, but it would be nice. Like, I don't know what other country it could be. If there was a Tencent box out there, nobody would ever trust it, so that would be a problem. What? This sucks. What's the point of even playing these secrets if it doesn't activate the secret keeper ever? Continuing with this article, for those looking, the next gen box will feature an 8-core CPU based on the 3rd generation AMD Ryzen line, a custom build Rydo Navi GPU that will support ray tracing, and a custom unit for 3D audio that will apparently redefine game audio. I heard that it might be basically using the same similar technology to ray tracing with the audio, so that I guess sound would get muffled if a creature stood in front of your ear and the sound source. Maybe that's about all that would turn into, though. And the ray tracing for audio and ray tracing for video are both not going to really revolutionize things, frankly. Better lighting will always be nice, but ray tracing is really first generation stuff here, and I bet it doesn't get used much at all. A lot of these technologies, they come out, hair effects and fabric works, like they make the games look cool in very specific instances. I would say ray tracing is probably the best iteration so far to be more of a generic idea that will improve games overall, but it's not really going to revolutionize the way things look. As for an 8-core CPU, I have an 8-core CPU in my PC right now, and my PC's pretty old at this point. Will it be faster than my PC? Probably by a little bit, but unless we know some stuff we really would need to know is what's the layer 1 cache, what's the layer 2 cache, what are those speeds. Layer 1 and layer 2 are the small bits of RAM that are in the CPU that get used all the time. What is the core frequency of each of these cores? Because if they're running just 700 megahertz time, well, let's just keep it simple. If they're running 500 megahertz times 8, that would be a 4.5 gigahertz CPU. what that would be considerably slower than if they were running 700 megahertz, or if they're running a weird scheme where they have some cores that run at some speeds and some cores that run at slower speeds, which is something that they do on mobile, some of the mobile architectures. But I don't think Ryzen does that, although I'm not familiar with the AMD line. So it's an ATI Radeon graphics card. ATI has owned the market for this generation as far as video cards. That really doesn't mean anything, though, that you should buy an ATI or an AMD now, since AMD bought ATI Radeon graphics card. I would still buy an NVIDIA GTX. Now, what's also interesting about this talk of the PlayStation 5, this tease to get people hyped, it's weird the timing here, because they're doing it a little earlier than E3 is going to happen. I think E3 happens in like 3 weeks, or maybe I am totally wrong about that, but that's what I think I heard. So Sony was going to have a announcement, I think, a couple of weeks before E3, and then that just lets they're just letting Microsoft now say, well, our Xbox 2 is going to have all of this and more. Let's see. They say the SSD is specialized. It will dramatically reduce load times, and noted it was one of the most requested features from a dev standpoint. That being said, it doesn't seem like they mention a hard drive, so you might be paying quite the premium for a PlayStation 5 to get an SSD that's moderately small, and then you might very quickly find out that you need to go plug in a hard drive, which that really wouldn't be a terrible system, frankly. If it came with a 64 gigabyte, 128 gigabyte, 256 gigabyte SSD by default, and then there was just an easy way to slam in a 4, 6, 8 terabyte hard drive into it, just a big old desktop hard drive for more space, that would be cool. That being said, anything you download to that bigger hard drive is probably going to want to be just transferred to the SSD, so if you put a very slow hard drive in there, that'll be the bottleneck, and you'll never want to switch between games. So it almost would need a seamless transfer system where all new games get installed to the SSD, and all old games, when space runs out, just get backed up to the hard drive. Or if there is no hard drive, then the SSD's got to be really, really big. To highlight the benefits of the SSD, the guy showing off the game booted up Marvel Spider-Man on a next-gen dev kit, which is on an early load speed version, and compared the performance with that of a PS4 version. On the current generation, fast travel across Manhattan took around 15 seconds, while the new console, the exact same journey took all of 0.8 seconds. It allowed the game world itself to be rendered at a much faster speeds without any drop off in visual quality. Which, okay, that just means that the entirety of Spider-Man's overworld of Manhattan was in the SSD or in the RAM itself. RAM speed and technology has gotten a lot better, but it also has gotten a lot expensive, and some of this stuff feels very much like it's going to be going on for, well, no, some of the stuff that the PS5 is claiming to have seems like it's going to be very expensive. So, $600, $700, maybe even $800 for the PlayStation 5. Could it really be that expensive? Maybe. Like, and at a certain point, you might as well just buy a PC. Frankly, because of their censorship issue, I think you should buy a PC regardless. Like, there's nothing that they could possibly put in a PlayStation 5 other than their own proprietary software and their exclusives that makes a PlayStation 5 capable of doing anything that a PC can't. So now we just need to deal damage. Let's see if we have a reroll. Let's reroll this. Druid or Hunter. Just need to get victory with the Druid or Hunter. That shouldn't be too hard for the European account. And play a bunch of cards. Let's see. The article continues. There's also a hint of a suggestion that Death Stranding might become a generation-spanning title, which no surprise there. Death Stranding might be a generation-spanning title between the PlayStation 6 and the PlayStation 7, for all we know, because this is Hideo Kojima we're talking about. He might just polish that game for another decade. No word when it will actually hit shelves, but they are rolling out a 2019 release, which, okay. So,
Hey, I swapped your buddy for bombs.
if at E3 the Xbox 2 was announced and it was available now, they could get a potential year ahead of the PlayStation 5, particularly if the Xbox 2 is somehow feels like it is less powerful, and Microsoft is too locked into development to improve that. Otherwise, by saying it's not coming out in 2019, that gives Microsoft time to continue to work on their console and match or beat all the statistics that were mentioned here. There is literally no mention of RAM, which to me implies that the RAM is not going to be very, very high, whereas the high speed amount and large amount of RAM in the Xbox One X was a big selling point. But yeah, in the end I'm still fully on Team PC, but if I had to pick a console, I'd pick the Nintendo Switch first, and then I'd get an Xbox. That being said, this new Xbox that is discless, and we'll talk about it more, does not really intrigue me, because I'm fairly certain I could get a refurbed Xbox One S with a disc drive and a bunch of used games from a GameStop cheaper and have a better experience with that. Particularly if I was trying to get an Xbox One X for kids who play kids games versus, say, people who are more centric around playing first-person shooters and the big AAA titles.
They're so sting.
Let's see, what do I want to do? 5 damage to all minions. Summon 1/1 boombots. Let's do that.
Reactor core online.
Meanwhile, first game we have on Steam today is called Psychedelic, which looks like it's crazy shapes. I don't know why you would make an experience like this a video game. This clearly is something that would be better as a non-interactive experience. Apparently this game is not even available for purchase. But regardless, it's tagged nudity for some reason. Yeah, there's no polish here and nothing that would make me want to think that this makes a good game. It might make an interesting visual experience, or something you would watch while listening to trippy music or while doing recreational drugs or something, but interacting with it I don't think is the experience. Like, video games are about control. Even if you're in a walking simulator, you're turning something that would have been just a movie into something that you control the pace of because you're walking in that walking simulator. When that control and interaction is nominal, unimportant, it stops being a video game. The game part is gone and it just becomes video. Alright. Battlecry and Death Rattle deal 5 to all minions.
Dead or alive.
Next we have a game on Steam here called Drift Force that looks like an actual racing game. Like, it looks like F10 or F-Zero. Yeah. There is a notice I'm seeing here that it seems like there aren't any other cars on the track. So not much of a racing game. Super fast endless racing game is what it describes it as, for $4.49 discounted. Yeah, I don't see a reason why I would want to play an endless racing game. I feel like you need some other racers on the card, on the track, so I think they're missing a trick in that. Let's see. Death Rattle, summon something with Death Rattle from your hand and trigger it. Ooh, that's not gonna be good.
You're coming with me.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Geeks SOS Cyberpunk Stealth Action game. It's got 16 positive reviews. It looks like there's something here to at least deserve a follow. There's a lot of games I've seen like this. Certainly top-down twin-stick shooter games. And frankly, it's in one of the list of games I don't like to play. It's early access for $3.19. But I'll give it a follow and check it out. Let's see. What do I want to do? I need room. So I do this. And then do this. And then I need room again. There we go.
You're coming with me. That's incredible. Job's done.
So yeah, I'll put Geeks SOS on the wish list. Next we have a game on Steam called Glass Smash. This is a little physics game. We've seen games like this, although the concept of smashing glass is slightly interesting. I don't think I'd want it on a 2D perspective. I think I would prefer a 3D, almost VR game for that idea. $1.49 discounted. So yeah, that's not making it. Next we have a game called Border Officer, which is probably a troll game. Yeah, it looks like a low effort asset flip game. Trying to do like a 3D Papers, Please while also being politically divisive, not decisive. $8.59 discounted. TechRaptor has decided to do something here, and I'm not sure if this is something I want to engage in or not, but I will put it out here. They've decided to do a best, the TechRaptor's best game of 2019 every quarter. So quarter one. So for the first 4 months, the best games they think that have come out, which might be helpful to me certainly, because there's if you ask me directly what were the best games that came out in quarter one this year, I'd say there have been no good games really that have come out this year at all. That's basically how I would put it. We got fuzzy graphics. Let's see if we can play Rogue or Warrior. Who do you think will win on rank play? Rogue or Warrior? Let's try Warrior. The problem I immediately see though is they give it number 5 the Wargroove, which I'm fairly certain TechRaptor was paid to promote Wargroove. They give number 5 again to Resident Evil 2, which seems weird. And then they give number 5 again to Resident Evil 5. So they're like a 3-way tie between Resident Evil 2, Wargroove, and Devil May Cry 5. Arguably, I guess maybe Resident Evil 2 and Devil May Cry probably are some of the best games. I don't think Wargroove should be up in that same category. The problem, I guess, here is I'm just never going to be the type of player unless my YouTube channel just really blew up and I could afford to pre-order games and play them day one. Like, I'm never going to be playing these new games, so they're not going to be in my mind. And that being said, I feel like there was way less hype in talking about Devil May Cry 5 than there was about Resident Evil 2. By the way, there is some DLC either coming out or out now for Resident Evil 2 that will unlock all the unlockables for like $5.99. So you don't have to play all of the games on hard mode scenario 1 and B and get an S++ rating. It is sucky that you would have to pay to unlock those things, but it's probably not worth your time if you really want to unlock that stuff. Almost certainly there will be an ultimate version of the game but even the ultimate Game of the Year version of the game may not have that DLC. Resident Evil 4 was the same way, and some of the previous Resident Evil games. There clearly are collectibles in some of the Resident Evil games I've played that I never bothered to unlock. So, yeah. Take that for what it is. There's also DLC for Devil May Cry 5 that apparently wasn't that big. They gave number 4 to Metroid Exodus, number 3 to Kingdom Hearts 3. I would argue no. just a straight up no to Kingdom Hearts 3 being on that list, because I don't think, like, I saw another YouTuber make this argument, and I agree with it, that Kingdom Hearts 3 is a game for nobody, because nobody who played Kingdom Hearts 1 or 2 still wants to play Kingdom Hearts, and Kingdom Hearts 3 is not playable for new players and kids. The article here says it took 14 years between Kingdom Hearts 2 and Kingdom Hearts 3 to come out. They gave number 2 to Sekiro Shadows Die Twice. I think you know what you're getting with a Dark Souls-like game, so Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, I think, delivers in what people want. It gave a more difficult game and an interesting enough story and gameplay. And then they say number 1 is Apex Legends, which for Q1 maybe Apex Legends is the best game according to TechRaptor, but I'm getting the feeling that Apex Legends is approaching the end of its life too. Side note, at the end of last stream we talked about, I mentioned an article I had just saw where a Twitch streamer was banned for doing blackface, and we'll talk about it later, but this is the character here that the white Twitch streamer was trying to cosplay, which, I mean, there is a considerable amount of non-white characters in this picture, except for this extremely pale shinobi, potentially Chinese or Japanese character. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lack of standard white people in Apex Legends. That doesn't matter though. When cosplaying, don't change your skin tone. Just, that's the number one. Even if you were playing, if you were going as the Hulk, you probably shouldn't do green and paint your body green. Maybe you can get away with doing that if you're going as the Hulk or something that's alien color, but yeah, I'll talk about it later. Let's see, what do I want to do? 1 damage on all other people.
Lambs? Those aren't exciting enough. Watch this.
Next, GameIndustry.biz has an article here, and this is interesting because we were just talking about how Jen McLean left IGDA about a week ago. Well, now she's working for Amazon Game Tech. She is the global biz dev head for small and mid-sized studios. So she left the International Game Developers Alliance, which is somewhat of an organization. I don't know how much authority they really have to work for Amazon.com. Heck, if Amazon.com would come knocking on my door, I'd probably go work for them too. Assuming they were giving me a mid-tier management job and not some low-tier worker job, which is probably what they would offer me if they were going to offer me anything. I guess there's nothing particularly sneaky about that. It's just, yeah, you left the industry and then you came back to the industry to work for a different company. It's not a big deal, but it might come back to bite her in the butt. See, what you could do with something like that is if the IGDA made some decision or said something in support of Amazon.com, and it turns out that she was already in negotiation or thinking about working for Amazon.com. She may have done some sly crony thing to help Amazon.com. That would be about the only thing that would be potentially a little fishy looking, and that's about all it would come down to. Probably nothing close to being illegal, but, and this is just all pure speculation. Now that she does work at Amazon.com, if IGDA decided to do something that specifically promoted and helped Amazon.com, that would also look pretty fishy. This is the problem. This is why pretty much people in management versus organizations that are really more in support of the workers and the game devs over the corporations and the companies, there probably really shouldn't be that much crossover there. It's like the lobbyists becoming politicians and the politicians becoming lobbyists. It just doesn't look proper in a lot of instances. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Capcom debuts its own classic systems, a $260 plug-and-play home arcade. It looks like this. We'll see if we get a better picture of it. It's just the Capcom logo with 2 sticks and I imagine 6 buttons per stick. There are Chinese versions of this that are way cheaper, and they don't look hideous with a Capcom logo. Generally speaking, I would also say that this is a case of some dumbness, because you don't want 2 fight sticks next to each other. You want 2 fight sticks that could be placed on the lap or on the table with some elbow room. Yeah, so you're really not getting any elbow room. You really can't twist at an angle if you need to. You really got no control. This is extremely expensive, ridiculously expensive. It includes 16 games like Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Ghosts and Goblins, and Darkstalkers, and Predator vs. Aliens. Very old games that are just running the Capcom Play System, CPS1, CPS2, arcade ROMs.
What now?
Let's see. So the emulation is being used by FB Alpha, which is the exact same emulator that you can run on the Raspberry Pi. So this is the
What now?
just laziest effort, in my opinion, to make some money here. Which really, this is an indicator more than anything that Capcom doesn't care about making any new games. Because if Capcom was going to do this, you wouldn't have it say Capcom and look weird like this. You would have it be a square fight stick that has Capcom art, and I would have a whole collection of Capcom art pieces that you could put on it and change it and customize it yourself. So like 50 custom square images with the holes already punched out that you could switch with different games, classic games like Darkstalkers and such. You would have it have a lot more than 16 games, and you'd be selling it with cheap plastic and cheap controllers, and you would be trying to get the early market, not the pro market. no pro fight stick player in the right mind is going for this. That's just not gonna happen. Alright, let's do
Engaging
this.
TC-130 mental dislocator.
Echo, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. I guess we can keep on doing this. Yep. So just like a terrible ripoff of a product, it's when I first saw the article mentioning it last Monday, they said it was going to be £400. Either the British pound has devalued quite a bit, or I was doing the calculation wrong, but that seemed ridiculously expensive even then. Let's see. 1 to all of the minions. And just do this. This will just hurt me a lot more than it would hurt anybody else. So let's just play this. TechRaptor has the same article. New PlayStation is coming, but with backward compatibility, but not in 2019. Let's see if there's anything in this article different. No, this is the exact same article. Like, it's just a frankly, this is almost a copy and paste article as the Gamma Sutra article, which is probably a copy and paste article of the Wired article. Well, I had a game on Steam called Desert Lions, but apparently it was removed from Steam because now it's just taking me to the front page. This is the first instance in a very long time that games have not been allowed or been removed instantly on Steam. So that's interesting. Let's see. 5 more damage split. Yeah.
Light the fuses!
There we go. Yes, and there was another game. So apparently,
well played.
There was a publisher, some troll that tried to put a bunch of games on Steam because I ran into 3 of them that are just not there anymore. TechRaptor has an article here. Downfall review. The whole world is out to get you. Is this a tabletop game? Yes, it is. So I keep falling for these. I wish they would label them better. But anyway, almost in the slight competition to the Capcom $260 fight stick that I don't even know if you can play. Like, yeah, I'm not even sure that you can play it using a fight stick. I like a fight stick. So, yeah. But in slight competition to the Capcom fight plug-in the TV system, Plug-in Digital, which is a company, reveals plans for a China office. French games distributor expands into Asia following the $2.25 million investment. There goes my rank down down we go. We'll try Rogue this time. Let's see, is there anything else to be said about this article? Not really. If Plug-in Digital is the company that makes a lot of the plug-in to TV licensed devices, that probably would work pretty well in China, because a lot of people don't have consoles in China because consoles were illegal to be purchased in China for a very long time. One assumes that most Chinese people have access to a TV, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's mostly cell phones or you know, game cafes, net cafes, and things like that, and PC gaming that happens in China.
Job's done.
But yeah, everybody always wants to get into China, but then you have to sell your soul to do it. GameIndustry.biz, the ISFE, I'm not sure what that stands for, calls on European gambling authorities to tackle online skin betting. Comments come following the move by the Danish gambling authority to block 15 skin betting websites. I saw some articles saying that this was Valve's fault for the Counter-Strike Go betting thing, and some of that is true. Like, Valve certainly has made a system where you can bet for Counter-Strike Go skins outside of Valve's website and then trade those in a weird way, and they're trying to stop that, but the real solution is the one they haven't taken, which is to simply stop all skins from leaving Valve's marketplace and just be a monopoly and just say, look, for our software there will be the Valve marketplace and only the Valve marketplace. There's just too much gambling going on there. That kind of goes to show you how anti-exclusive Steam is, that Valve won't even exclude other people from using their skins or trading their skins on third-party sites. But also, almost certainly it is an instance where Valve knows that the gambling is going on, and they're cheating to make money. Apparently the ISFE is the Interactive Software Federation of Europe. I've never heard of it. The bigger story, I guess, here to take from this, though, is, yeah, Europe wants to regulate things and legislate things. Big surprise. By the way, the UK porn ban, at least in part, goes into effect, I believe today. So no longer can you just have an internet service in the UK and access porn. You're going to automatically be opted into porn filters, and you're going to have to jump through paperwork and hoops to say, no, I'm an adult and I want to actually look at porn. The porn ban, I think, also basically destroys the porn industry that's being created for any porn created in the UK by limiting and regulating out several acts that are not particularly that extreme, several fetishes. So yeah, the UK is becoming more and more of a nanny state. We have a game on Steam called Scream of the Viking 3. This looks like a piece of garbage. MS Paint graphics. I'm not even sure what this really is. Seems like you're just kind of gonna walk around. It's a platformer with some backgrounds. Well, that's not interesting at all. Let's see. Other random lackeys.
Oh, up to no good.
This guy's toast.
Gamma Sutra has an article, Get a Job, Remedy Entertainment is hiring a senior concept artist. I feel like this job has been listed for the past month or so in Espoo, Finland. There was an article, I think we'll talk about it, where a conversation occurred between game devs and universities, and they really talked about how there's just a disconnect, I think, in major part between what is being taught or what is thought is needed to be taught to prepare someone to work in the video game industry by the universities and what the video game industry actually needs. I would not be surprised if that is exactly the case. Some of my programming classes in particular were teaching very old things that are not industry standard at all, and while the general concepts might be similar, you're really not doing any favors by not having people program on modern software and modern techniques and modern languages, which is to basically say there should be an Unreal class where you learn how to program in Unreal. There should be a Unity class where you learn to program in Unity. There should be 3D modeling classes using Blender or the...
I usually work alone.
What is this? Let's see. Return a minion to its owner's hand. I don't need to do that.
I did this. Oh,
So yeah.
Here we go.
Next we have a game on Steam called The Ploshers, which looks like it's a almost arcade, old school style. You jump up and you shoot paint at these different enemies, and maybe you have to stand on certain platforms to get different colors of paint. It's $5.99 discounted, which is frankly way too expensive for what it is. If this was a 59-cent game and it looked a little bit better, I might consider it, but it doesn't look a little bit better, and it's way too expensive, so yeah. That's out. Let's see. Deal 2 damage. Return that to that. Deal 2 damage. Do that. Do that.
Here we
do
go.
That. And then return. So, GameIndustry.biz has this article. Native American nations files lawsuit against Valve over skins gambling. So it wasn't the European people that were suing, it was the a Native American nation. Quote, Valve has profited handsomely for years from illegal online gambling and has made only token efforts to stop it, in quotes, says the Quinault Nation. This is, you have to, of course, remember that the Native Americans' interest in gambling is quite frankly because they run casinos and rip off people, and in most instances Native Americans in the United States are not getting better lives because of the profits. All the profits are going to fewer and fewer people every generation. And they work really hard to say, no, you're not a pure blood enough Native American to be a profit sharer, or whatever it would be called.
Desperate seas on roll.
2
let me go
plus
home.
5 plus 3, and then attack here.
Here we
go. Valve arguably has profited, but they have not directly profited from the online gambling. And I seriously doubt that this is going to change anything. Yeah, the article on Game Industry .biz does point out that since the loot box debacle in late 2017, only Belgium and the Netherlands have taken substantial action, which saw Valve halt the sale of Counter-Strike Go loot boxes in both regions. The skin gambling though and loot boxes are kind of different things. So that's another thing to remember.
I will do shopping now.
That yeah, there's a bit of difference there. But maybe not a huge difference. The loot boxes certainly could be argued as skin gambling too, depending on if you're actually putting any money in it or if you have any opportunity to earn any money from it. A lot of games certainly have loot boxes. Clash Royale's loot boxes, Destiny Child, the game I'm trying out and I've kind of tapped out on. It's just going to be the long haul at this point. I'm just going to have to do a lot of grinding to get my characters up to higher levels. Let's see.
Chop them down.
But yeah, both those games, Destiny Child and Clash Royale, have loot boxes basically. The difference is you pay money in and you can't pay money out. Whereas Counter-Strike Go skins did have a system where you could trade things out, and then a third-party website might trade those things out in the form in the form of cash or some other credit, something of actual cash value. Like 4 packs for playing 100 cards there. Well, that's all the European daily quests. We may have some leftover news. So while this is opening, we have a game on Steam called Bomb Chicken, which looks like the chicken poops out bombs. I'm fairly certain I've seen a game like this before. But it looks good. It doesn't really look like it's a bad game as a concept. You poop out these bombs in a kind of Bomberman style to get both height and defeat enemies. And there's boss fights, and yeah, this looks playable. $13.49 discounted. I'm gonna put this one on the follow list. We finally found one that looks like it deserves at least to be followed. Let's see. Now this next game on Steam, as I'm opening this pack, is kind of surprising because it did not get anywhere as much advertisement as I thought it was going to be. There was definitely some early hype going on for this game, Heaven's Vault, particularly for its kind of cool art style. So you're this archaeologist in space going to different planets trying to decode this language, and you're going to find things and then you do these translations to decipher this lost language. But this really felt like this was going to be a much bigger game than it seems like it is. And it always had that potential that it wasn't going to be much of a game. But it's rated positively, so it certainly deserves a follow. this is kind of a weird, almost point and click, new concept on point and click, and the art style itself isn't going to sell, I think, too many people, but the gameplay does sell itself. If we look at this developer, I don't believe they've done much else. They've done the sorcery games, like real-time strategy games, and the game 80 Days. So there is an attempt here to get up into a better tier of graphics, but they clearly could have hired better 3D modelers and better 3D animators. I feel like even just looking at these cutscenes, this is an example of a game that would very well this is a game that could be remastered and tell the exact same story and look way better. They want $21.24 for this game, plus a $10 soundtrack. So, and it's got 44 achievements. That's rather expensive. This is probably a game I would recommend not getting day one too. It is also, though, a game I'd say probably don't watch any spoilers on it, because I don't know how replayable it is. It may be that the language is only one way, and once you figure out how to translate the language, you know the entirety of the story in the game. Ideally, for a game like that, I would want to have a scenario where the symbols randomized so you could play it again. But it might very well be like The Return of Obra Dinn. Once it's done once, it just has no replayability. So next we have an article here from GameIndustry.biz. Forza goes free to play with Forza Street. Microsoft rebrands and reboots Miami Street, a game that already existed, out now for Windows with mobile versions to follow. So it's not really a Forza game as much as it is a free-to-play spin-off of a whole different series just being rebranded. Probably not a bad idea for Microsoft, but that doesn't, anyone in the know is, I seriously doubt anybody's going to start playing Forza Street and find out that it's really that fun. I don't really know why anybody would want to play a racing game that is targeting mobile anyways. Racing games have always targeted like the best looking graphics possible, so the idea of going down in graphics quality is particularly silly. Let's see. We're not really getting a lot of cards here that we don't already own, but that's fine. We need cards, we need dust. You know what's funny? With my frustration of playing Castlevania Lord of Shadows 2, I've somehow managed to become less frustrated with playing Hearthstone. I think a lot of that is because I'm actually winning games now and getting up higher in rank, but there is something to be said about, yeah, I'm really not feeling like I'm having to play too often. So 25 cards are dusted, which I think probably means no new cards were made. Disenchant this for dust, and that wasn't new for sure. And yeah, that's the European account done. Let's move over to the Asian account. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. New Metal Slug for console, Neo Geo 2 and 3 in development. Plus SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy sales top over 300,000. So, in my continued efforts to figure out what is a good amount of sales, apparently a game that is a very niche game like SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy, which was not really a great fighter game and also not very good in my opinion, even as a lewd fighter game, because it's not showing really any skin or any real nudity. It's showing skin for sure, but no real nudity. That being said, it topped 300,000 sales, and apparently 300,000 sales is good enough for a niche market. So I'm readjusting my mind here and saying that AAA games that sell over 2 million, 2.5 million are very good successes. Niche games that sell over 300,000 sales are considered successes. Let's see. The fact that they're making Metal Slug for Neo Geo versions 2 and 3 is ridiculous, because that means you'd need a Neo Geo arcade machine to play it. Yeah, that's pure nostalgia bait there for sure. That you would have to have an old Neo Geo. Maybe some console played Neo Geo machines. It also kind of goes to show that the engine for Neo Geos haven't really changed much, or it was super future proof as far as graphics and playability, or they just haven't changed the games much. So I need a druid, rogue, shaman, warlock. Victory. So let's try druid over here. Let's see, we've got a game on Steam here called Fight Angel, and then a bunch of Asian characters. I saw a review of a game where it was just a terrible fighting game with a bunch of female characters.
I must protect the wild.
Looked like it was a real failed experience. This is tagged nudity fighting game. It's rated positive already. So this was early access for $19.99. It supports English and Chinese. So you've got, and apparently this was a greenlit game, so it's been in development for quite a long time. You've got a 50-50 chance here. I'm going to put this on the fall list. This could be a good fighting game with some nudity and cheesecake in it, or it could be just a terrible cheap Chinese clone of a fighting game that actually isn't worth playing. And I probably would play something like SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy before this, because then those are recognizable characters from other games, and it's a fighting game from a bigger known developer instead of a small time developer. Next we have a game on Steam called Aeronorth Reborn, which looks like it's a RPG game or a card game. Actually, it looks like it's just a card game. Interesting. It's a pretty busy background for a card game. In comparison to Hearthstone over here, you've got big empty space to see the cards, lots of empty space on the sides. There's a bit of a reason for some of that. So, Aeronorth Reborn is also tagged nudity, early access, $9.89. So meanwhile, while Sony is not cool with nudity, this collectible card game in Steam is. I'll put this on the fall list since it looks like it's a card game, but I doubt it's gonna make it. Let's see if this next game can be shown on YouTube family friendly. I would say no, because there's actual Black Stars centering things on this slide puzzle game. So we have a cheap, low-effort slide puzzle called Hentai Time for 79 cents. Let's see. No trade. It says trading cards will come at some point. The attempt to make trading card games has been, at this point, I think, completely successfully eliminated. The people that try to make cheap trading card games are failing to do that. I will say Hentai Time is much more aggressively showing off in its screenshots nudity, even though it has black stars over the naughty bits. It is showing a lot more skin than most of these games. That doesn't mean it's a game worth buying even at 79 cents by any means. It just seems like they might be getting desperate, or a new approach is being taken. Next we have a game on Steam here called U Factory. It feels like there's been several of these factory style games in development. Like, I could put this on the fall list. It's $9.99 and in early access. I'll put this on the fall list just to be cautious and generous, but I imagine it won't get any reviews. So transfer all your things into tutu things. There we go. Legendary men give it rush.
Time waits for no one.
Next we have a game on Steam called Office Escape, which is probably a low effort escape room kind of VR game. Yeah, there's nothing here visually interesting for what's being shown. Its early access requires VR, and it's $3.99 with no discount, which is extremely cheap for a VR game. Next we have a game on Steam called Hentai Netwalk, which is already at mixed reviews. It's not the game Netwalk, as I understand what that game is, because that was like a bulletin board system game. This is just a spin tiles to match a pattern game that seems like it's then going to reveal an anime picture. It's 59 cents, it's in a bundle, it's just totally not worth having 20 achievements. Yeah, what to do? Pretty much any game that has hentai in the name is a low effort game. That's just how it goes.
For the wild.
In the same way that if somebody made a game called Pervert Puzzle Maker, you would know that that's probably not a game worth playing. So this next game we have on Steam is called Cup Guess, which I can show off some of this. It's basically there's something under the 3 cups. Guess which cup it is. But what you have here is you're playing against gravure, lingerie models, women of Asian descent in lingerie or states of undress. You're probably not going to see too much actual nudity, but that is the sell here. This is a very basic different type of game with real world video or stills of real world female people. So that seems like that is the new thing. This game is $2.39 discounted, which is really cheap. It's English and Korean. I would suspect that this is very possibly a Korean game more than a Japanese game, but maybe not. Maybe this is just a new thing that they're doing. Let's see.
For the wild.
There we go. There's no reason to put cup gas on the on the fall list though,
I can ease your pain.
because it's not much of a video game. 3 Trents. Deal 5 damage to all minions. Alright.
We will devour this world.
GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Iraqi lawmakers consider a ban on violent games. I have no idea what's going on in Iraq, as probably is true for most U.S. citizens. Last I heard, there's basically a need to split the country in two, and that would just cause a civil war. So that's not. People are just gonna have to get along, and probably struggle to get along, and they're trying to rebuild their country. It's not super surprising that a Middle Eastern country would lean more conservative and try to ban anything Western, particularly video games. That has been the trend for one reason or another. Very possibly it is the United States' fault even for that, where there was at one point a spring of progressive ideas in Middle Eastern countries. It has now been replaced with a lot of extremely restrictive and conservative countries. Yeah. So we have Travis on the chat saying, "Hey Rydo, hey Travis." So the article here says popular games like Fortnite, quote, threaten the social and moral peace of Iraq, says one MP. This might very well be an extremely out of the mainstream view of this. We've heard the same complaint against Fortnite in the UK. We've seen same complaints against Fortnite in the United States. People who have kids are tired of their kids playing Fortnite, and they're trying to blame it for quite a lot of ridiculous things that they shouldn't be blaming it for, and they know better. Alright, so I need to just play as a Shaman and a Warlock and play a bunch of cards. We'll play Warlock. Let's see. Iraqi authorities are considering a ban on violent games that threaten the social and moral peace of the country. Now, the thing about this is a governmental ban by any country of video games means that they don't trust the adults in that country to play video games, and they want to restrict the liberty of adults. Now, if they were going to just do the normal thing and say, we're going to have a rating system, and in this rating system, games like Fortnite can't be played by certain children under a certain age, that would be right within the norm. Although I think Fortnite is E for everyone. when it arguably maybe shouldn't be for everyone. But a straight out banning is very extreme. Travis asks, what's your opinion on the cards this expansion? I'm liking it so far. A lot of diversity in the decks. What I like about the new expansion is the automatic deck building feature has opened the door to me winning a lot more and getting higher in ranked play. The actual cards for Rise of the Shadows really didn't seem like they were changing much or doing much different. They were a lot of times just replacing stronger cards that have been knocked out. The major problem with the Year of the Dragon and Rise of the Shadows in particular is that so many of the old expansion cards now are in Wild. There's barely any cards in Standard. They did make Mage a lot more playable, which is probably the right move, but it's coming at the expense of a lot of other things. But overall, I think this has been a better experience than the last couple of expansions. It's really just going to come down to, in the long run, what are the higher top tier meta decks going to be. Once people figure out the top tier meta decks, are we going to find something that's incredibly annoying? So far, I have not run into anybody that wants to force us to draw 30 cards and play 100 turns and play some kind of 8 to 10 card combination for a 1-turn kill. I think they've done some work to get rid of those type of things. Let's see. Destroy half of each player's deck, for instance. The lackeys and things like that really haven't done anything, and there could be some hero replacement cards could have been added in this expansion. I imagine the next couple of expansions will continue to just make things a little bit better and keep on going. With this being probably the first expansion that Ben Brode was not involved with, it could have gone a lot worse, and it seems like it's gone pretty well. Let's see. Level by Level Gaming said, hello, I just subbed. Thank you for subbing. Please, everybody sub, and if you can find at least one other person to sub to, that would be great. I desperately would love for my channel to get up to 1,000 subs, so then I could run the bare minimum of ads and make a few pennies on doing this as a job, like the old days. Yeah. Travis says, yeah, but at least you don't have to worry about Dark Knight, just letting your opponents win games like Jaina and Golden Death Knights. Yeah, Death Knight. Yeah, there was a lot of cards that needed to go into Wild. I think maybe it would have been better if they had selectively put some cards into Wild instead of just putting everything into Wild. They're really opening the door to make a bunch of cards in some future expansion that are just exact copies of already existing cards. But it seems like they've also done a lot to get rid of the Archmage Antonidas 1-turn kill, where you could get 4 Sorcerer's Apprentices on the field and Archmage Antonidas on the field, and then that would potentially win the game for you. And even though I'm playing on my Asian account right now, I'm still doing pretty well. Mostly I've been playing Paladin. Paladin seems to be the big ticket winner for rank play. Let's see. Level by Level Game says I have a 700 member channel on retro gaming and found you looking at Hearthstone videos. I like to support other small channels. Okay. Self-plug by Level Gaming. Yep. Let's see. Getting back to the Iraqi story, Iraqi authorities are considering a ban, blah blah blah. The Committee on Culture, Information, Tourism, and Archaeology views with great concern the spread of the phenomenon of electronic games that is causing violence among children, young boys and girls, said Iraqi members of parliament and committee chair during a press conference. Citing no evidence, Gulab said violent games were affecting the social, psychological, and educational level of everyone. End quote.
Must move quickly.
Earlier this year, the Oxford Internet Institute published a study described as one of the most definitive to date, finding no link between violent games and increased aggression in children, which has always been the case. Like, children are just not that pliable, and they're naturally going to be aggressive. They're going to try out aggression and have to be limited in their aggression or express their aggression in healthy ways. That's just growing up in the night. And if anything was causing Iraqi children to be more aggressive, it would be the fact that their government is new and they just came out of an oppressive dictatorship, and there was a lot of violence around them. And frankly, Iraq in particular has a lot better things to do with their time than trying to ban video games for everyone.
Let the pain speak to me.
Additionally, as reported by the Middle East Monitor, 2 of Iraq's Shia clerics advised players to be, quote, wary of addictive properties and the intellectually wasteful nature of the games, end quote. Which, that seems to be much more of a much more balanced way of expressing that sentimentality. But a lot of anti-video game rhetoric comes from religions. Many religions. Because religions start to fail to have as effectiveness. I'm not saying a full sentence here. Religions stop to be effective when they are not on the minds of the people in that religion almost constantly. As soon as you're not thinking about whatever religion, those religions start to lose that mental effect, that mental control over you. And in modern time, in general, there's just a lot to distract yourself with, and religion is never like that. The Christian religion from thousands of years ago did not like that. They did not want any books available for people to read. When books became popular, they did not want any music outside of religious music to be played or heard. When music became available to the public, it has been a consistent issue that all religions have always wanted their members to spend 100% of their time thinking about that religion. And this is no different thousands of years later. I don't even think that Fortnite in particular is a great example of a game that kind of encourages violence in general. If anything, let's be honest, Fortnite encourages kids to floss. And that is the most annoying part I have seen of the most recent generation. Is I've seen a lot of little kids doing dances and flossing. Now, if the Iraqi people are against dancing also, well, that might also be a part of the problem. Certainly religions have been against dancing for an extremely long time too. Most of them. But yeah, Fortnite's not this horrible boogie monster that they keep trying to make it out as. Arguably it's not that good of a game, but it's good enough. Good enough for little kids to play. That's all that really matters. Travis comes back on the chat. Yeah, Raphem Legendary is literally just the golden monkey effect. Replace hand and deck with random legendaries. I would like to see them make different effects for once. And they really pushed certain class archetypes, like a lot of the cards are only good in 1 or 2 decks. Level by level game says this is a neat idea to have news articles pop up during your gameplay. Yeah. After a couple of years of just playing Hearthstone, I got bored, frankly, of just playing, and I was not really having a lot to say anyways. So it's Hearthstone gameplay while covering video game news now, which works pretty well because that allows me to do 2 things at the same time. I'm streaming live, so I don't have to do any editing or like cutting up the videos. I'm learning about the video game news, which keeps me more informed about things, and it lets me have something to talk about when it usually takes me at least 3 hours every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to play Hearthstone, because I'm playing the Americas and the European and the Asian accounts, so 3 different accounts, which I'm only playing the European and Asian accounts because I thought some people might want to play me at some point in the future. But it works out because it means I have more gold when new expansions comes, which means I can open more card packs. People like to see the card pack videos. Although Hearthstone is getting pretty old in the tooth now, so long in the tooth. So I don't know how many new people are coming to Hearthstone. That was another thing about the Rise of the Shadows expansion, is I'm not really sure it did a huge amount of effort to bring in new players, but I'm not really sure what they can do to bring in new players. The game is so old that if there was something like Magic the Gathering Arena came out and it was super popular and everybody jumped over to that, I would considerably consider jumping over to it too, just to be there day one. Next, we have a new game on Steam. On top of looking at news, I talk about every game that comes out on Steam. So we have a game here with a bunch of Asian characters called Stickman Rainbow. It looks like it's probably a low-effort horror platformer game. It's 59 cents discounted, and it's simplified Chinese and Japanese, so I would assume that this is a low-effort Chinese game, but it could be a low-effort Japanese game. Nothing there to say on top of that. I already talked about this article, but GameIndustry.biz has an article. Education Summit highlights divisions between UK universities and studios. Opinion piece. but Games Ed 2019 ended on a message of hope if the two sides can work together. So I want to get into this a little bit more detailed, as I just lost. Let's see. British game studios do not hire enough graduates. This is probably true everywhere. There's a huge amount of cronyism in the video game industry, and they don't want to hire new graduates. They want to hire their friends that just got usually laid off from a company like Activision Blizzard or EA or something. They do not offer enough placements, which I guess that's guaranteed hirements after out of college, or internships, which, okay. And they're not engaging with education properly. UK universities are not equipping graduates with the skills they need, says this opinion piece. They're not preparing them for the life in the workplace. These complaints are hardly new, it says. So yeah, just top of the line complaints that have been probably echoed many times. It says there are 12,000 new games graduates arriving annually in the industry that only houses 14,000 people. So there's a lot of people graduating from UK colleges and then not being able to get jobs also, because the 14,000 people are already employed. I think in general there is a problem here of a lot of people thinking they can be video game programmers when they should be just taking generic programming classes for other jobs. You will be paid better and treated way better doing any kind of other programming job instead of video games. But the UK video game industry is also particularly small. So that is a big issue that you really can't fix other than to be honest, and colleges in general need to be honest and say that that you really shouldn't have a major of video game programming. You should just have a generic programming class, and they probably should even make their classes more exclusive and smaller, because a lot of people in the programming classes I were in particular, were taking programming because they thought every job was going to involve programming, or they just needed an elective, and they did not succeed, and they did not care to succeed. So it probably would have been better if there were only 15 highly motivated students in a classroom instead of 30. A lot of games and a lot of times.
Reporting for duty.
Level by level gaming says, I see you have other games than Hearthstone. Lots of other games, yeah. Over 5,000 videos. You can look through the playlist tab to see a playlist for every game I've covered. Almost every game has been covered from beginning to end, with no edits. There have been probably a small few that I rage quit on, or if it's labeled as a spotlight, then I only spent 30 minutes or so showing it off. Let's see. Travis asks, have you tried playing Magic Arena? It's pretty fun. No, I haven't gotten around to it. I'm dragging my feet to see if it becomes popular. I don't want to jump into something new until I'm fairly certain it's what people want to see. Because if I jump into something new, it probably means, at least for a small amount of time, I am not going to play Hearthstone, and I don't want to have to double my effort load there and play Hearthstone and Magic Arena. So I'm just like waiting to see if Magic the Gathering Arena becomes really popular.
The light protects me.
The level by level game says, I played Magic the Gathering from the 2nd edition called Revised, and still have a bunch of old cards. Never played a digital version. Yeah, that is one of the issues, certainly, that is going to come up with Magic the Gathering Arena, is how many people who have a week game where they go to their favorite comic book shop or they go over to their friend's house every weekend and play each other. How many of those people are going to decide to move over to the digital version and play? And if it's none of the old people, then it becomes the question about how many of the new people, how many new kids would want to play Magic the Gathering Arena. Also, Magic the Gathering has the problem, way worse than Hearthstone does, of putting old expansions into the banned lists and then just printing new cards that have the exact same description and just different art. So they just make the same cards over and over again in Magic all the time. Also, Magic the Gathering has a problem in which it has magic in the name, so some overly concerned parents will be upset about that and not let their kids play because of that. There's little dramas that happen all the time in Magic the Gathering where somebody does something that irritates somebody else, or somebody has the wrong political leanings and that irritates somebody else because it's just such a long-running game. There's a lot of baggage on Magic the Gathering that people would have to get over, and it would have to be the new popular thing. It's kind of the genius of the Pokemon trading card game, where that basically the Pokemon trading card game is just Magic the Gathering with cutesy Pokemon cards instead, and it is targeted at a newer generation, and it has a lot less baggage around it.
Uther versus
Let's see. Travis says later in the chat, yeah, the card version is better, but the digital version isn't bad. Magic has been releasing digital versions on an annual basis, and I've tried some of the previous ones, and that is another concern, is they need Magic Arena to stick around for a long time and not have a version that has a focus on a single player story mode that then gets replaced the next year with a new version of the game. Because there was like a Magic 2017 digital game, that 2018 came out with a slightly better version, than 2019 I don't think had a version. So there's been 2 or 3 Magic games, digital games I've tried on mobile. That is also a concern, as I don't think Magic the Gathering Arena has a mobile version yet.
Got something to hide?
Let's see. Travis says, I'm actually thinking of taking some computer programming classes. I want to work at Activision. I really like their games, and always a dream of mine to work there. Okay, so Travis, I'm going to tell you the truth here. Activision is not going to be in business by the time you graduate from high school or college. It isn't. You're just going to have to, if you want to be a video game programmer, like I was saying before, take generic programming classes. If they have a class that teaches you how to program in specifically Unity and Unreal, that'll be the major engines that you should learn. You should probably take a 3D modeling class and see if that's your thing too, using Blender or something like Blender. More often and more likely, you're going to have to take classes online, well, not classes, but learn through self-learning online to use Unity and Unreal. And your main goal, if you want to be a video game programmer, is to have the skills to make your own game before you even graduate from college, and have it on Steam Direct for $100. Just self-publishing and being a self-publisher and doing something different or interesting there. Play a lot of different games, learn a lot about games, learn what what you don't like about games and what you do like about games. I would also say take audio classes in school, take music appreciation, things like that, take writing classes, story writing and creative writing. All of these things will help you at the very least understand what makes good games good. But yeah, you're not going to get hired by Activision. You could try to go and work to the college called Digipin that's in Redmond, Washington, and that might help you get jobs and be near Nintendo of America and Microsoft. But if you're working for Nintendo of America, you're not really going to be programming games from scratch. You're just going to be localizing Nintendo of Japan's games. If you work for Microsoft, you could be working on Windows or something else, which wouldn't be terrible an idea.
For justice.
So Microsoft would be a thought. A lot of the games that Microsoft technically owns, they own through third-party companies that are spread around the world. You probably should take a French class if you don't speak French. That way you could work out of Montreal and in Canada, because there is a high number of video game companies in Canada. But that would probably help you more than taking, say, a Japanese class and thinking that you would program video games in Japan. That would never happen. But in general, also I'd say take an accounting class so you can do your own taxes and run your own, just pay your bills better. And try to stay as generic as possible in what your major is going to be. A lot of majors in colleges are not, are specialized way too much and then not used. So a general business administrator, manager looking degree plan is a lot better. So if you could be hired as a manager in one company, you can be hired as a manager in almost every company. So that'll help you a lot more. Now, getting back to Activision, if you love the games that look like Activision, then you probably are going to have to make those games yourself and self-publishing. And there's nothing really stopping you from making a game that feels a lot like an Activision game. You just couldn't use any of their intellectual property unless you could convince them to license it. But yeah, Activision specifically is probably going to be bankrupt in the next year. They've already fired, like, I think it was 800 employees between Activision and Blizzard, and it's really just being run by a holding corporation. Level by Level Game said after that, 5,000, what? That's insanely cool, dude. Yeah, I like to get the numbers high. Certainly, that would be another thing. Is I'm on like episode 1,100 of Hearthstone alone, so because I break up these episodes sometimes into numbered episodes that air every day, and part of the thought of doing this YouTube channel was to have very, very big numbers to put on a resume in case I ever needed to apply to work somewhere. And so I have like over 300,000 views, which really isn't that big, but that sounds like a huge amount to most people. And over 5,000 videos made. And every video I make, for the most part, is at least 30 minutes. I've recently taken it a little bit slower. I kind of burnt myself out, unsurprisingly, after about 4 years of that. So now I'm doing like 30-minute episodes, and it stretches out how long a series runs on my channel. But yeah, it's still pretty good. Back to this story. We had already talked about this. GameIndustry.biz has this article. Sony says hashtag #MeToo streaming are behind the stricter limits on sex in games. It's concerned over legal and social action against sexually explicit games have caused it to revamp the guidelines on what it allows on its platforms. So Sony, which moved their offices, Sony Entertainment Interactive moved their offices from Japan to California, are using a decent excuse in the sense that yes, streamers could be streaming explicit adult-only games onto streaming services, except for the fact that there's no streaming service outside of Pornhub where you could do that. If you stream anything explicit on Twitch, you're banned immediately. If you stream anything not family-friendly on YouTube, you're banned or at least demonetized immediately. So they've taken an ultra-conservative, puritanical approach to something. As far as the hashtag #MeToo thing, there aren't very many instances in games where there's a slimy guy or person in general with power over another person that is forcing themselves onto the female characters of video games. And let's face this is a one-way street. It's only about female characters. They don't care if the male characters are full-on nude in games. But yeah, that's not the example really at all. Most of the instances of bits of nudity are fully the fictional character's own decision and own actions. Like, yeah. If anything, this argument, the hashtag #MeToo argument, could be made on anime way more, because anime as a art form that shows movies does on rare occasions have scenes where a character will try and rape or force themselves on a female character. I don't think there's been any kind of like raping or molesting or forcing yourself on any video game character in an extremely long time, except for adults only games that wouldn't ever be on the PlayStation systems anyways. The Senran Kagura games, for example, are one of the games mentioned here, and those are characters that the anime ninja girls that their clothes take damage, and that's about it in some games. Or in the example of Senran Kagura Peach Beach Splash, it's literally just the anime ninja girls shooting each other with squirt guns like Splatoon in bikinis. And the idea here, this is the same argument that was made by Valve until they gave up this argument, is Sony is concerned that Sony will become the target of legal and social actions. Sony would in no way be the target of any legal actions for the type of games that would be approved and allowed on the PlayStation. That is a disingenuous lie. Would they be a target of social actions? Not to the level of extreme that they're censoring, because the games that they're censoring and the things that they're censoring are more extreme than what's coming out on the Nintendo versions and the Microsoft versions. So if Sony was just following industry standard guidelines, there really wouldn't be a problem. And there have always been ESRB ratings guidelines. It's the reason why we don't see things like this. And this is, once again, a big problem for people trying to create games around the world, but particularly people trying to create games outside of the United States where people don't have extremely puritanical views, like some of the SJWs seem to keep pushing. It's so crazy. The Free the Nipple movement used to be a pretty extreme progressive view, and now we have the SJWs becoming regressive leftists, pushing for censorship out of just mostly stupidity more than anything else. In Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony have all confirmed that they forbid adults-only games to appear on their platforms in 2007 after Manhunt 2 received that rating. So it's been 12 years since any platform has allowed an adults-only rated game on their platform, and nobody has really had a problem. So that it's ridiculous that 12 years of the ESRB working the way it should, Sony's going to come in here and Sony has come in and just pushed for even stricter control. And it goes here to generally explain that if a Japanese game developer makes something, or any game developer makes a game, and they submit it for approval by Sony, and Sony says you have to edit this out and censor this out, that's potentially thousands and thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, because it may push back your release date. It means you're going to have all your employees work overtime. It's not just some harmless, you just have to flip a switch and that content is gone. Particularly some games are of a nature that Sony may just not like half the game, and if that's the case, then you've got half a game. And it would be one thing if Sony was publishing and funding the development of these games, but that's not what they're doing. They're just acting as a platform holder and a licensor. And if it weren't for the fact that the PlayStations are harder to hack these days, a lot of game developers would just release their game without the approval of Sony. But instead, what we're seeing is more and more Japanese developers come to PC, or go to the Switch, or go to the Xbox. It would be laughable to think that nearly any of the Japanese developers would have gone to the Xbox a few years ago. That's how drastic Sony's stance has changed. And I said it before, but it probably indicates that Sony of Japan no longer cares about Sony Interactive Entertainment and the PlayStation brand. So I would heavily suggest not getting a PlayStation 5, because the lack of care, the lack of treating your game devs well, implies that the lineups will not get better, but only get worse. Alright. So, at this point, I think I've covered all of the daily quest on Hearthstone. I meant to type in new, not news. I don't think any of these cards are actually new. I think my thing is just glitched. Well, these are new, so we can disenchant this to get more dust. And so let's try and just mark the rest of these off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try and power through all the news articles and leave all the games that came out new on Steam for Friday. Friday's stream will probably be a little bit longer. This is kind of weird because this is usually I run out of news before I finish daily quests, but ever since I started winning more often, I'm running out of daily quests. Just every time. See how glitched this is? You just have to go back and forth, and then half the time you come back in here and there will be some new cards still marked as new. Here's a part of this article as we're wrapping up the story. The Sony official said the company doesn't have written guidelines on what's acceptable or not, because that policy was introduced kind of suddenly in the wake of the hashtag #MeToo movement. It's worth noting that the producer of the Senran Kagura franchise, in particular, left Xseed parent company of Marvelous Entertainment, citing increased restrictions on sexual content in the games as a reason for his departure. So it's already caused a well-known game developer to leave his company in Japan because he wants to work with PC or Microsoft or Nintendo, and Marvelous Entertainment probably has some agreements not to work with those companies as much. Let's see, level by level game saying, I remember how crazy the attempted rape scene in The Last of Us was. It was subtle and very disturbing, masterful storytelling in games. Well, I haven't played Last of Us because it was a PlayStation exclusive and I'm a PC gamer, so I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, there was also an implied one in the first Tomb Raider reboot game too. So there have been some storytelling elements of that, but both the Tomb Raider reboot and The Last of Us were several years ago, and this is hardly... What I mean to say is video game players don't want to see those scenes. We don't all have some weird fetish to see those kind of scenes, and we don't see those scenes very often. Both the Tomb Raider reboot and Last of Us were AAA developers who had trusted writers behind them, so they weren't going to get too explicit or glorify the whole incident. They were showing it in a bad light, in the way it should be shown. Even I've heard writers now are censoring other writers and complaining about when somebody writes a book, write something in the book that's not acceptable, which is just not good for creative arts in general. All this, you can't say that, you can't do that. Everything should be on the table. Thoughts should not be illegal. Actions should be illegal in some instances, but thoughts should not be. You should be able to write something, say something in fiction and express it without any real rebuttal or reprise. Moving on, GameIndustry.biz has an article over here. Rocket League nixes loot boxes in Belgium and the Netherlands. This is because of government regulation, which I don't think there's anything else that needs to be said about that. Yeah, no loot boxes for Belgium and the Netherlands, probably for the better. Let's see, skipping over all the games. TechRaptor has the review of that game that just came out, Heaven's Vault review. It says Duolingo without the threats. Let's see what they gave it without spoiling too much here. They gave it an 8.5 great. Heaven's Vault manages to look forward to learning a new language, which is something I honestly never thought a game could do. Pros, fascinating story, wonderful setting and characters, interesting story branches, awesome translation system, beautiful graphics and soundtracks. Cons, selling quickly became annoying, and glitches. Well, okay, so that's good information to gather. Let's see. Team Ninja mentioned that the not Dead or Alive series, I missed it. Well, I don't see their tweet now. Team Ninja's old game, the Ninja Gaiden series. Ninja Gaiden 2 is now available through backwards compatibility. So if you want to play Ninja Gaiden 2 and you have the disc, you can play that. I felt like that was something worth doing. I think also you can get Assassin's Creed Unity on Uplay for free because of Notre Dame burning down, or burning, not completely burning down. So, and I know Ubisoft is a French company, so it's not a huge surprise that they're promising to promote give some money to the rebuilding of Notre Dame. I saw something online that goes to make a good point, that Notre Dame is owned by the Catholic Church. It's worth $16 billion. The Catholic Church has more than enough money to rebuild Notre Dame. You shouldn't donate to charities in general when a big thing like this happens, because a lot of them turn out to be scams, whereas an established charity that's been running for years can be investigated a lot better. And there are better charities certainly to donate to. People are still going homeless and hungry. You really don't need to donate to rebuild a church, a Catholic church. That'll get done no matter what. Let's see. The Academy of Interactive Arts is still taking submissions for 2 more weeks of video game artists and reps. I believe here we can show off some of these submissions, but I believe, if I recall correctly, when I first saw this, you are donating this art in some form, printed or printed out 3D models, and then it is being auctioned, and the proceeds of the auction is going to the ESA or the Academy of Interactive Arts and Sciences, and you're getting no profits there. So it's like a terrible deal if you're an artist to donate your art to maybe get some worthless award. Meanwhile, the museum is making all the profits. But I guess if you support their museum for some other reason, it may be something you would consider doing. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. New GameStop promotion will allow full price game refunds within 24 hours of launch. This is called the Guarantee to Love It. Where's my mouse cursor? Guarantee. But the truth is that's going to be used by very few people, because it really only means if you pre-ordered the game and then you saw a bunch of reviews of the game within the first 48 hours of its launch that said it was terrible, you could get a full refund if you probably go to the store, which is going to be pretty hard for most people to do. I think games generally come out on Tuesday or Thursday, so if you're trying to get into the store on a Saturday, maybe you have enough time if it comes out on a Thursday. If it comes out on Tuesday, you would have 48 hours from that Tuesday launch time. So not a really good guarantee. That being said, GameStop is doing pretty bad business, and anything that helps them would be helpful in general, because fewer and fewer people are buying games in disc format Although I still feel like a lot of younger people buy games at stores. Level by Level Game says, GOT books are chock full of minors being... Oh, Game of Thrones. Yeah, the Game of Thrones books. And the Game of Thrones TV series are... I was going to mention Stephen King's It has like a odd sex scene near the end of the book that is pretty infamous. It was, I believe, written during the time that Stephen King was doing a lot of cocaine. But yeah, these things exist in other forms and fashion, and as long as it's just an idea in your head and it's not being acted on, it shouldn't be stopped or censored. Maybe limited to age appropriateness. In the same way I wouldn't allow a 6-year-old to read a Game of Thrones book, I wouldn't allow a 6-year-old to play most M-rated video games, or probably any M-rated video games. Moving on to the next news story, Ninja of Twitch fame has been named to the Time 100. Popular streamer represents gaming on the magazine's annual list of influential people. I am not really sure what Ninja is playing these days, because I thought he kind of burned out on Apex Legends, and I don't really follow him. Ninja is kind of like PewDiePie in a lot of ways, where the news stories, the news writers love to mention the biggest guy and forget about all the small guys and all the medium guys and girls out there that are trying to stream and trying to make a business out of it. We don't really need YouTubers and Twitch streamers. We really need to see a lot more success for the medium streamers and the small streamers, and instead of seeing all the attention and all of the accolades and all of the money going to one person. We don't need mega corporations of streamers. That's how you get things like T-Series, is you get mega corporations taking over YouTube. Let's see. Where's my mouse cursor? GameIndustry.biz has an article here. Gamigo shuts down Atlas Reactor. Trineworld's free-to-play tactics title closes after 2 years. Quote, no longer can sustain itself. I don't think anybody was really playing Atlas Reactor. This will be a continued and repeated story for a lot of free-to-play Overwatch clones. I think that's what Atlas Reactor was. And just free-to-play games in general. I wouldn't be surprised if PUBG shuts down a lot of its servers, and Fortnite becomes the only real battle royale game of mention, and a lot of other Fortnite clones fail. Next, we have a Gamma Sutra article. Xbox merges Live Gold and Game Pass under the Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. Now, does this mean they're getting rid of Game Pass or Live Gold? I don't think so, because that would then make it more expensive for people who just had Live Gold. Yeah, it says, for now it looks like the 2-in-1 service is being offered in addition to the existing monthly plans rather than replacement for either. It would be really, really irritating if they merged Live Gold and Games Pass and raised the price on everybody, but I suspect that is exactly what they're trying to do in the long run. And with the next Xbox 2 or whatever it's called, I wouldn't be surprised if you get something that it includes Game Pass and Live Gold, and that is it, and you can't separate it for a cheaper price. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Able Gamers opens accessible.games, a dev portable for accessibility info. This might be the beginning of something, but it's so early days. A website where developers can access more information on how to make their games more accessible for people who have like color blindness or hearing impairments or mobility impairments. I guess if you have a speech impairment, there's a few things you could do in your games too, but most games don't require you to speak anyways. The drama of Mortal Kombat still goes. Gametsu has an article here. Mortal Kombat 11 Shao Kahn trailer. I just want to point out here, as the developers who are now in charge of Mortal Kombat 11 have said that they've been disrespectful to all the female characters in all the previous Mortal Kombat games, and that's why all the female characters are covered up from head to toe in Mortal Kombat 11. They just put out a trailer that is showing a boob window and the chest and nipple. I assume that's a nipple of Shao Kahn, a male character. So, yeah, I want to say that phrase again. You should respect people regardless of whatever they're wearing, even if they're naked. But, yeah. This is such a ridiculous double standard that they are holding themselves to for Mortal Kombat, a series that was once known for pushing the boundaries of the video game industry, has taken the most ridiculous, regressive left, puritanical mentality towards its female characters. It's so silly. And it kind of sucks because I was going to try and play one of the new Mortal Kombat games, but I don't really feel like supporting Mortal Kombat anymore. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Atari announces 2 mini consoles launching in September 2019. It's a mini Pong and a mini Centipede toy. Very barely video game related, frankly, when it's a plug-in TV device. Let's see, level by level game says, often sort by upload date and pick a new video by a small YouTuber. That's how I found you. I wish more people would do that, quite frankly. But yeah, it is really hard to get any kind of views on YouTube these days without doing something fishy and probably illegal and getting your channel banned. The YouTube in particular just does not like gaming channels. But yeah, I haven't had any success on Twitch either, so what to do? TechRaptor, Ubisoft donates to Notre Dame, offers Assassin's Creed Unity free on Uplay. So if you don't mind getting the game only on Uplay, which means it would still look like you don't own it if you have most of your games on Steam or some other launchers, you can get Assassin's Creed Unity. I believe Assassin's Creed 2 actually has you do a small mission where you climb through the inside of the Notre Dame castle, but maybe not. Maybe that's a different castle and it just looks a lot like that one. But I assume the Unity game actually does have you climb around the Notre Dame castle. So Ubisoft is donating 500,000 euros, and you can get the game. You can play the game free for a week via Uplay. You don't even get the game for free. That's pretty cheap. I don't think Unity was even particularly a very good one of the better Assassin's Creed games. Is this page gonna load? Let's see. Hearthstone taking forever to load. So Hearthstone put out their announcement. Ignoble Garden is here with basketfuls of free rewards. So you have to log in between April 17th and 21. You can play a new Tavern Brawl, and you get a login reward of 2 golden eggs and 2 card packs. That's not too bad for just logging in for an Easter themed reward. What's funny is I don't know why they don't have more of these events. They probably should every week have an event. That would bring more people in here. Here, Tech Raptor has the same article about the Capcom home arcade game. You can see it slightly better here. It seems like the buttons are clear, so that would be really hard to see anyways. Like there are probably 6 buttons here, but I cannot see them in this probably digital rendering. This is $250. It has 6 games, and it's questionable whether you can even use it as a fight stick. I don't think you can, actually. Here's the full list of games that it is on. 1944, The Loot Master. All these games are old. Alien vs. Predator, Armored Warriors, Capcom Sport Club, Captain Commando, Cyberbots, Full Metal Madness, Darkstalkers, The Night Warriors, Eco Fighters, Final Fight, Ghouls and Ghosts, Giga Wing, Mega Man The Power Battle, Pro Gear, Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting, and Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and Strider. There's more Street Fighter games that you could have had on that easily. This is a ridiculously overpriced piece of garbage device. I hope that these end up in GameStops in a bargain bin for like $20. At that point, I would probably buy it just for the buttons and switches, and I would just break it open and take the buttons and switches out of it, which I don't even suspect that the buttons and switches are going to be very high quality for arcade buttons and switches. I doubt you're going to get some actual Japanese high quality Sanwas or in there or something. The Epic Game Store has a publishing. You can see this tiny text talking about Epic Games security. Seems like it's really long here, but if you are going to use the Epic Games Store, which I don't suggest, you probably should seek out this account security page and read it. It's probably going to tell you some very basic things and claim that their software is 100% secure, which is a claim that EA Origin apparently cannot make, because TechRaptor has this article. Origin security flaw could have let hackers run malicious code. So apparently if you have EA Origin installed, which maybe I do, you need to update it, because people could make these special Origin links that would then execute a malicious code and infect your computer with who knows what and everything in between. So yeah, update EA Origin if you're using EA Origin. Another prime example why we wouldn't want more launchers on our computer. It's just another security vulnerability, another software you have to keep updated. Gamasutra has an article here, aiming for affordability. Xbox announces the Xbox One S All Digital Edition, which is what it was rumored to be called. I would have liked, frankly, to see it smaller, since it's losing the disk drive. I would have liked to see it cut off about a quarter of its length. It's $50 less than a regular Xbox One S, but I imagine you could go into a used game store, get a refurbished Xbox One S with a disk drive and several used games, at least 2 or 3, and it's selling at $250, which is still too expensive. It has the exact same inner workings as a regular Xbox One S, no bigger hard drive, nothing or anything like that. It's coming out May 7th and includes Minecraft, Sea of Thieves, and Forza Horizon 3 installed, of course, because no discs are incapable of installing. Yeah, Level by Level Games said those are garbage. Great games, though. He's probably talking about the Capcom fight sticks. Yeah, that was like, just how did they even get to a release at that point? They should have been selling something like that, one fight stick for maybe $40 and a bunch of old games. Because it cost them nothing to license the games to themselves for the most part. Maybe Aliens vs. Predator cost a little bit of time because Fox owns that license, and Disney, I guess, now owns that license, but they should have been making the cheapest entry-level fight sticks, not super expensive. You'll buy this because it says Capcom fight sticks. Let's see. TechRaptor has a review, I think, here. Outworld is full of cool moments, but requires too much of a time investment. Let's see if they gave a full review here, or if this is just a generic coverage. Yeah, it's just a generic opinion. So, yeah, they're saying Outward is not worth playing. Let's see. Skipping a lot of stuff here. St. Rose the Third, the full package for Switch, has a debut trailer. I'll just say that out loud. TechRaptor has an article. Star Wars The Fallen Order will have optional online play according to the PSN store. So I don't know if that's co-op or something else. They said it was going to have no multiplayer. It is very, very important, I think, for people to not get hyped about Star Wars Jedi The Fallen Order. Like, this game could easily be canceled before it gets released. And people need to keep that in mind. Don't get hyped about games until they're out, even if they're super, like, popular licensed games, like a Star Wars game would be. I'd probably be more hyped if it was a different company that had the license than EA. I guess I just wanted to mention this. They added Shazam to Lego DC Supervillains. So that is the most recent, I guess, DC game that they could have added him to, which is fine. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article here. Jump Force's remaining 7 DLC characters have been announced. It will be Biscuit Kruger, Good Boo, Katashi Katsuki, Bakugo, and more. I have no idea who these characters are. Let's see. One's from Hunter x Hunter, one's from Bleach, one's from Dragon Ball, one's from My Hero Academia, one's from One Piece, one's from Grimmjow. I know Grimmjow from Bleach. And Naruto. I watched Bleach dub, so a lot of these names would have been this. Jump Force, unfortunately, not a good game by every review I've seen. I wish it kind of was, but it isn't, and it doesn't open the door that there would be a specific increase of quality Bleach games or Dragon Ball games or even One Piece games. Let's see. Level by Level says it's been fun, got to go. Bye. I'm just about wrapped up myself. We just ran into quite a bit of news, and the daily quests were too easy today. GameIndustry.biz has an article. Student sues the CEO of Minecraft Education Edition's Chinese publisher. The Minneapolis woman claims Richard Liu forced himself on a woman at her apartment following the company-funded networking event. So this is tangential at best to the video game industry. A CEO of a Chinese publisher that publishes Minecraft Education Edition, which the only reason why there is a Chinese publisher publishing Minecraft Education Edition in China is because of China's terrible laws, because otherwise Microsoft would have just published it themselves in China. It's believable. Like, China has a lot of people, and a lot of people that don't know how to behave and act. The whole world has a lot of people that don't know how to behave and act, so these accusations are believable. Well, I guess whatever due process someone is due in China is, if they're suing them, it probably means that no criminal charges would ever be made. It is also pretty common in China to try to get money by suing people for things they didn't do, so that is also something to keep in mind. I've heard both stories, frankly. So we'll probably never get any follow-up on that story. It really doesn't have anything to do with the video game companies. It's kind of like the same story that happened a few months ago where the Nintendo of Russia CEO was complained about being a jerk or a drunk or something, and they just officially warned him and didn't do anything else to him. TechRaptor has an article, the Xbox One S All Digital is announced at the Inside Xbox event. We already talked about that. We're not gonna see, I imagine, for the Xbox 2 any new camera device. So that is something that also is a concern. Is like there probably won't be any camera device for the next Xbox. There will probably be some kind of standalone VR headset that works maybe with PC and Xbox, or maybe no VR at all for the Xbox 2. Next, here is a story from Wednesday. TechRaptor has it. Twitch suspends popular cosplayer for wearing blackface. Now, I want to argue this is the character she was cosplaying. I want to argue what this Twitch streamer did was not traditionally what you think of blackface, because blackface means, in my mind at least, that you are doing full black shoe polish over your face. You are making big red puffy lips, and usually you have a white circle around your face depicting that you definitely are not just changing the color of her skin. What she did is stupid, and this is not recommended. I don't think any cosplayer should have done this. She would have looked perfectly fine, if not better, as just doing her natural skin color as this character. Because the cosplay, despite there being so many cosplayers that barely wear anything at all and really are just doing close to porn, the cosplay is about the costume. And so if we look at the costume, it's not very good. It doesn't really match what we see here. Blue medical gloves. She's got white gloves. She's got a bag of some kind of liquid. This is a bottle of liquid. Her top is white. Her top is a dirty, blood-stained green. This symbol over her head is not in the right orientation. It's not sharp and tight. This is some kind of Asian characters where this is just kind of gibberishly drawn. This mask is not the same as this mask. So she's just doing a really, really bad job of the cosplay. Her hair, these twin buns are further back than what they are being done here. But yeah, So it's a pretty bad cosplay and a pretty bad decision to paint your entire skin. Now, I still would argue, traditionally speaking, this is not blackface. This is skin coloring and a bad idea. We've had similar things. At least the argument here, when this dust ball from Chuckle got translated, at least the argument here is this is closer to traditional blackface. But even that makes no sense because this is a dust ball, not a human. And they just switched it all around, and some people were probably more upset about that than they should be. It's just ridiculous that they needed to change it. These two stories really don't relate to each other in any way. People are getting overly sensitive, certainly, about a lot of things, in my opinion. Moving on, GameIndustry.biz. Twitch launches its first game, Twitch Sings, a free karaoke game developed in conjunction with Harmonix Designs for streaming. So, Twitch Sings has been out for the weekend. I haven't heard anybody actually playing it, so probably came out with a whimper, if I were to guess. I wouldn't be surprised if very few people use or play that game unless somebody like PewDiePie comes out and popularizes it, or some big streamer, Ninja or somebody. And that brings us to the Humble Bundle. And so there was the monthly bundle for Assassin's Creed Origins. There's a mixed bundle for a 3D printable Dungeons and Cities. I'm not interested in that. This Bandai Namco bundle is new, and the Square Enix Collective is new. I think the Bandai Namco is old, and the Humongous is old. And this is a books bundle. So let's see what, we'll just start here, what the Square Enix Collective bundle offers. $1 or more, you get Gotia, Octahedron, and Deadbeat Heroes. As far as I know, I don't own any of those games, but I am not super excited to get any of those games. On the other hand, I think I already own the Turing Test, but I would love to get the Forgotten Ands Collector's Edition. So if anybody wants to send me this code because they already own the game, or because they don't care to play this game through Twitter direct message, that would be great. Black the Fall, I don't believe I own. So Forgotten and the Turing Collection are both two games that are probably overpriced. Paying $7.79 gets them down to a pretty decent price, and then the rest of these three games and this game could be considered gravy. Then if you pay $12 or more, you have Tokyo Dark and Children of the Zodiarcs, which I've never heard of that game. Tokyo Dark is, I think, kind of a visual novel murder mystery game. So yeah, that bundle doesn't seem too bad, but there's no big ticket game there. So the problem with a lot of bundles with big ticket games, though, is you probably already owned it. And this bundle I have already looked at. I already own this and this, so it wouldn't make sense to buy it. Little Nightmares and 1111 Memories and Get Even and Project Cars. Some of these games are mixed in their reviews, so it's a hard decision. Sword Art Online, Fatal Bullet, and God Eater 2 Rage Burst kind of makes some sense. Tekken 7 for $25 probably doesn't make sense. I would say that the Bandai Namco Bundle 3 is pretty iffy. So I'm gonna assume and not even look on the Twitter feed that there isn't any big news that has happened in the video game world, although I wouldn't be surprised if there was a large amount of news that came out for other things. And so let's just wrap up here. Thank you to both Travis and Level by Level Gaming for coming on the chat and chatting with me. That's always very much appreciated. It gets really boring when I stream and nobody comments. Thank you for watching again. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos, because that tells YouTube that my videos are worth watching. When you subscribe, please click the notification bell. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me even further, you can click on the link to Patreon down below, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist, and that would be very helpful also. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.